right, and welcome to the Courtenay Turner podcast. I'm your host, Courtenay, and I'm super passionate about moving and thinking. On this show, we are going to dive into all things health, fitness, personal development, lifestyle, and political, sociocultural. I've always been fascinated by people, and I love learning from the experiences and stories of others. This has been a treat for me, and I hope this is enjoyable and useful for you. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or any way that I can make this a better experience for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Hello, welcome to the Courtenay Turner podcast. I am here today with Erin Jo Harris. She is a performing artist, and she has coined the term Heaven Permaculture. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Courtenay. So good to be here. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So tell us a little bit about your performing arts and how you came to coin this term and got involved in it.
Great. So I've been a little artist for many years. Mm-hmm. I was singing and doing comedy since I was 5 years old. And, I was hooked immediately, just being able to make a whole audience laugh. It was like, I was done at that point. And I also was really into singing. So I grew up being in the performing arts and doing children's theater and directing children's theater. And I went to NYU for music theater. I was a director of an a cappella group there. And I got to direct all these amazing divas and divos and continued on. And I'm still doing it to this day. And I've done many other things as well. Like the artist life isn't always the most stable.
Right.
But it is very fun. And so I've done a lot of other industries as well, because I'm interested in life. I'm interested in how the world works. And in terms of, how that affected my life, politically speaking, I was at NYU when 9/11 happened.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that was really the light started to turn on. And I was actually medically injured by pharmaceuticals. Oh, wow. And then that really started waking me up. I got into holistic health and started eating organically and nourishing myself with whole foods and, real nutrients created by God, and learned about how the FDA, has really compromised the health of Americans for profit for decades.
It was created for profit. Yeah.
Exactly. So when this whole pandemic started to unfold, I started to realize this is all a plan. This is all BS. And, despite all the hardships that I've gone through, I'm very thankful that I came out knowing what I know, because now, I'm able to tell people, this has been going on for a long time, and been able to, use my will to maintain autonomy and freedom in my own life, and hopefully the lives of my friends and family. So awesome. That's my very, short story in a nutshell. So Heaven Permaculture.
Yeah. Before you get into Heaven Permaculture, I am curious to hear about, you said you were pharmaceutically injured, and that because you were in college at NYU. So I was in New York for 9/11 as well. Yeah. So first, tell me a little bit about how you were medically injured and how that took you on the journey, because I'm going to guess, you can tell me, but if I'm wrong, but I'm going to guess that kind of led you to the permaculture.
Well, I mean, the Heaven Permaculture actually developed recently last year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Coaching.
Okay.
Yep. Through coaching and through different explorations into my limiting beliefs or triggers and things like that. It's a very in-depth process, but I've been interested in holistics a long time, and different farming methods. There's organic, non-GMO, then you have biodynamic, then you have permaculture.
Okay.
So permaculture is a method by which the diversity of the farm produces its own ecosystem. So the whole point is diversity.
Right.
So you want to, sorry, I'm getting a call here.
Okay.
Decline. So, yeah, the diversity of the ecosystem provides the health of the ecosystem.
Yep, absolutely. Everybody plays a role.
Yes, exactly. So, but yeah, when I was medically injured, it was because I was diagnosed with a psychological disorder, and I was put on medication that was later recalled due to the fact that it caused diabetes. And I'm not sure which type. It's whatever one can be, adult onset diabetes.
Right, type 2, sure.
Yes, type 2. So I wasn't actually part of the recall because I took myself off of it.
Wow.
And I didn't actually progress into diabetes, but I had lawyers calling me saying, "Did you get diabetes?" And I said, "No, but I gained 35 pounds and I spiraled into depression, and I started doing even more drugs," which I was never really, into that.
Right.
So it was terrible.
Sure.
I became the worst version of myself that I'd ever become.
Yeah.
And I knew something was way off. These people were not interested in healing me in any respect.
Wow.
And they were just interested in treatments, which is what the whole medical industry is based on. It's based on treatments. It's not based on health. It's based on profits and patents. It's not based on health. And it hasn't been for a long, long, long time.
Right.
So for people to just blindly trust people because they have the word MD behind their name, is you do it to your own destruction. And they've killed hundreds of thousands over the years. And they're doing it right now. So this is a fact. This is not an opinion. And they hurt me personally. So I know that this is real.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, there's definitely a lot of challenges with allopathic medicine. I think it's supposed to be, emergency treatment. I think that's the problem. So I don't think that it's all bad. I think there's definitely a time and a place for, westernized allopathic medicine where, if you're, there's certain times when you have an infection, you need an antibiotic, and thank goodness we have them. So, when there are times where you need surgery and it will save your life, so there's definitely times for it. I think the problem is when it's something like what you were dealing with, where it's more of a chronic kind of a condition. And instead of getting to the root cause, they're giving you something to treat a symptom. And that can be quite problematic because there's always, a cost benefit analysis to anything. And definitely when you're taking prescriptions, there's always going to be some sort of a side effect that, in some cases, the person may decide that side effect is worth it for them. I'm not the one to make that decision, but people need to know that this is the risk they're taking. And if they're prepared to take that risk and they want to take that risk, that is on them. That is up to them to make that choice. But I think the problem arises where, it's a situation like, unfortunately, what you dealt with, where you didn't necessarily know that these were the unintended consequences. You were going in for one thing, you took something that left you with a whole bunch of other issues that made things worse for you. It didn't help you. So I think that's the problem, because when people aren't dealing with the root cause of something, and then you just keep masking symptoms with more and more medication. So,
well, it's like, like the point of your podcast, it's going back to traditions and traditional values.
Yep.
they didn't have cancer in traditional cultures.
No, it's true.
You know, they didn't have these degenerative diseases that we have. If you look at the work of Weston A. Price, he's kind of like the godfather of these like holistic ideas, because
he was studying why modern people were having all these ailments that didn't exist previously.
So it's like when people trade convenience for truth, or they trade convenience for health, you're gonna pay a big price.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't think that we as humanity can make those convenient decisions anymore. We really can't, because as we've seen, when you have a corrupt system, you know, that's why we have a republic, because the law is the law, not the people making the laws. Is their own law. So it's important to just wake up as humanity, so that we can say we're done with this.
The Great Awakening will combat the Great Reset, hopefully.
And it's like we've lost touch with the earth.
For sure.
The green stuff and the brown stuff.
For sure.
Let's just touch the dirt again. That's the best antidepressant, and it's free.
And it's free. Yeah, for sure. So tell me a little bit about your journey. How did you took yourself off this medication, and then how did you heal yourself?
Well, I didn't heal myself for a couple years. I was in very destructive habits. I developed an eating disorder through taking this stuff, and I was terrible. I was, you know, really rock bottom. And I developed bulimia. I started, you know, throwing up my food, and I just felt like I was worthless. I felt like I was so ugly. This is when I was like 19. So this is a long time ago. And I can't remember exactly what it was, but I remember being in my apartment in the East Village and finally just saying, like, I'm just going to not take this because something's very wrong. And then it's kind of like, you know, I slowly started getting a little happier. I had a little bit more hope in my life. I was able to focus more. I was able to achieve. Like I'm a high achiever. I was the first one in my high school to ever go to NYU and got a scholarship. And I'm like, you know, for better or worse, I wanted to succeed and I wanted to achieve.
Sure.
And I got really knocked down by this trauma that I experienced going through the events, you know, in New York during 9/11. So I actually had a neighbor who was a holistic health practitioner. He started befriending me, and he started teaching me about Weston A. Price, Paul Chek. I subscribed to Dr. Mercola long time ago. God bless that man. And he was public enemy number one.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Yeah.
But as he said on Dr. Oz, no one's ever died from eating greens or carrots or ginger or any of these things that he advocates.
Sure.
But they have died many times from pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was just like, that was my cognitive dissonance moment.
Yeah.
Where it's like, how could my parents not have known this? How could my teachers not have known this? I went to the best private schools money could buy.
Right.
I still didn't know any of this.
Right.
So it's like, if I went to private school, the best, and I still didn't know this, like, how deep do the lies really go?
Right.
And I was shattered. I was shattered. And I was very disillusioned. And so starting to do all of these new ways of doing things. Like I wouldn't even go eat anywhere in New York City. I would bring a jar of potatoes and greens to wherever I went. You know, like, I was hardcore. And I like, you know, I love to party. I'm a party girl. You know, I love to go out and dance and do all that. But it's like all of my friends, I was like, you got to be at my house by 9 o'clock. I'll cook for you, but I'm going to sleep at 9:30 p.m.
Awesome.
You know, this is in my 20s, y'all. 20s. So I was done, and I was serious about this. I'm not nearly that serious now, but I needed to change my life. And I do remember one very rock bottom moment is I had a small studio apartment, and I had so much like junk in my soul, in my body, in my head, in my life.
Right.
I had all my clothes in a big pile on the couch, and I had all my dishes in the bathtub. Dirty dishes in my bathtub because I had so many dirty dishes.
Wow.
And I was like, I got to change. I got to do something different. And so, you know, I cleaned everything. I rearranged the furniture in my studio. And that was when I was like, I'm going to bed at 9:30 every night. I'm not eating anything if it's not organic, and I didn't prepare it myself. And that was how my life changed.
Wow. And what were some of the things you noticed when you started making these changes? I'm assuming it wasn't like all at once, you know, that you felt all better,
Well,
right? Like
it was it was just the act of taking care of myself. And it was the commitment that it wasn't a diet.
Right.
It wasn't a quick fix. It was, this is what my life is going to be from now on.
Right.
And, you know, at that point, then it's kind of like the meter, you know, 80-20 rule. If you really want to tighten it up, 90-10, you know, if you want to be on that champion athlete level, you know, you got to turn up the notch of how disciplined you're going to be.
Right.
In your choices.
Sure.
But, yeah, it's like now I have the fruit. Now I look 10 years younger than I did 10 years ago.
Wow.
So it's like the fruit happens, y'all. It really happens.
Yeah.
But it's also, it's for me, it's really about spirituality. That even takes it to a whole other level.
Yeah.
So it's like reading the scripture and getting the revelation and being able to declare truth and to declare, you know, and to instruct angels to do things. Like I'm learning so much all the time. And it's very humbling. It's very, very humbling. And it's, it allows you to be a leader because of your humility, not because you put yourself on a pedestal, but it's because you humble yourself to say, I need wisdom. I don't know the right way. I don't know the right thing to do. So you let something be your standard. Like an architect needs a ruler to be able to build a bridge. They need a straight edge.
Sure.
So that's like when you put that straight edge, then your life really starts to transform and you can actually change culture.
Wow. Yeah. That's beautiful. So you said that you were in New York for 9/11 and that kind of impacted some of your views. Can you talk a little bit about that and how?
Well, through studying people like Dr. Mercola, then it kind of also got into like 9/11 truth, for example. So there's a lot of rumors on, you know, people who were there saying it doesn't make sense. We heard explosions, this and that. And I got into looking at what you might call conspiracies. And I call those people not conspiracy theorists, they're conspiracy analysts, because there are conspiracies.
Yep. And conspiracies can only survive in the dark. So we need to shine light on conspiracies. Yep.
Yeah, they're conspiracy analysts. And I started listening to some of these people, and I don't believe everything they say. I haven't seen it for myself. So
Right.
I'm always discerning what these people are saying. And then I say, well, let's see what happens.
Right. And there are theories. I mean, until you know something, that's the rule of science, right? You have to raise questions, you put forth a hypothesis, and then you test it. That's how you find out whether or not it's accurate. So
exactly. So it's like when it comes to the health and nutrition stuff, I tested it on myself.
Right.
And the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in the life. So when it comes to these conspiracy analysts, I listened. And I listened and I researched and I said, this sounds legit. This doesn't sound legit.
Right.
And I started talking to my family. I started talking to my friends. I started freaking out.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, why is everyone pretending that life is normal when it's actually quite twisted? And we need to like realize that it's twisted in order to change.
Sure. Yeah.
So let me actually just shut this door because these dogs are barking.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. Hopefully that's better.
Yeah, that helps.
So I started listening to, I guess his name is pronounced David Icke.
David Icke.
Yeah, David Icke or David Icke. I've heard it both ways. I always thought it was Ike, but
yeah, I did too. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah.
And to, oh my goodness, I'm totally blanking on his name, but there's a man who wrote a book called Behold a Pale Horse.
Oh.
So that was another book I read. I didn't even understand what the book was about, but all I know is that shortly after 9/11, he died. And he was talking about all
I don't know the book.
Things. Yeah.
And he was talking about what happened. Interesting.
He was talking about everything from different conspiracies with what they were doing with 9/11 to even extraterrestrials and things like that. So, you know, but when someone dies who's talking about something and they die unexpectedly, that's probably a sign that they were telling the truth.
Like Harry Mullis and he's very convenient. Yeah.
Or, you know, what
Brandy
about
Vaughn
or wasn't it the president of Haiti or some person, you know, like the president of Haiti?
Yep. The president of Haiti. And there was one other president also. Why am I blanking on that one? But yeah. Pretty recently.
So I started seeing these things happen.
Right.
And even Kennedy, even JFK.
Yeah.
If you watch some of his speeches, he is pulling the curtain back.
He definitely was. Yeah.
So come on, guys. We have the internet. We know that these people are lying. So let's get together, young people, and let's write our own laws again, like we've given the power to do in our republic. Yeah. Like it says, if the government is no longer serving you, tear it down and make a new one. But make one that preserves freedom and preserves the republic and preserves the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Amen. Yep.
So that's really what I'm interested in with Heaven Permaculture is these people are trying to destroy our country and totally enslave the human race even more because we are waking up. We are realizing this is a huge scam. They want to squash it. So how do they do that? Squash America.
Yep. Get rid of the beekeepers. Yep.
So no, they're not going to succeed. They are going to fail, but let's be a part of restoring it.
Yes.
And let's take back all the stuff, because I really got into libertarianism. I supported Ron Paul in the primaries during 2008.
Okay.
And so I was into the politics thing. I was really all about Ron Paul, libertarianism. He's the only person telling any part of the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And his son is doing the same right now, even better than Trump, even though, like Trump is really.
Ron Paul's doing a great job on the medical front. I'd like to see him be a little bit harder on some of the other stances, but in terms of the medical freedoms, he's really advocating. Absolutely. He's really fighting. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was in 2008. And then I really believe that Ron Paul was robbed. I totally believe he was truly elected, or he was truly given the nomination.
Mm-hmm.
But again, even if he wasn't, it was because he was suppressed by the media.
Yeah.
So how can you have a free election when the media is suppressing candidates?
Right.
You can't.
No.
So, and then when he didn't win, I was kind of like, whatever, I'm going to the private sector.
Mm-hmm.
Public sector is just beyond repair. So let me see if I can make a difference in the public or in the private sector.
Right.
But then when good people don't involve themselves in the system gets more and more corrupt.
Of course. Yeah, it's true. Right. All their needs for evil to be is for good men to look on and do nothing. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now we're seeing the effect of that in a major way,
for sure.
Because the people who want Marxism and who want darkness and who want evil, they're being controlled by spirits who don't sleep. They don't need rest. They don't ever rest. They are relentless.
They are.
And they're obsessed with power, and they will do anything it takes. Good people don't want to spend their lives obsessing about anything. They have balance. Right. They like to be in their gardens. They like to be with their families. So it's like, we need people involved because our opposition is relentless.
Relentless. Absolutely. Absolutely. So what is...
that's kind of my story.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's a great journey. And thank you for sharing it. So tell us, what is Heaven Permaculture and how is it different than permaculture? And tell people a little bit about permaculture, because I think one of the problems is that people have become so removed from, as you said, the earth. Most of us know nothing about farming or how it works, or, permaculture or gardening even, so most of us are so disconnected from any nature. And I do personally, I think it's by design. I think it's they want to stuff us all into the cities, so they can create the control grids where they track, stack, and pack us, and then deceive us into thinking that we're overpopulated and and make us dependent. So, that's why we have the big food, the big pharma, all the big banks, big corporations, all these big industries. And, we're sold this lie that we are dependent on them. And a lot of people really are, because that's become the lifestyle that they're accustomed to, and they don't know, they don't have the tools and the resources to live otherwise. So I think it's, great that people are starting to wake up, Great Awakening combats the Great Reset. So I think a lot, as you said, a lot of people are waking up. And I think if we can teach them how to be more resourceful and self-sufficient, then there's a lot more hope. So all this to say, do tell.
Okay, cool. So I started learning about permaculture with a great documentary called The Biggest Little Farm.
Okay.
And if you want to learn about the real permaculture in terms of farming, that's one of the best documentaries that you can check out. But these people, they basically took what was really a wasteland in California, and through strategic planting and through Heaven Permaculture, or through Permaculture,
Mm-hmm.
they created a paradise.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And it's very inspiring. It took 10 years and a lot of hard work, but they created a paradise.
Okay.
And it was all about diversity. It was all about how many different kinds of species can we cultivate on this one farm. And through the cultivation and the diversity, they were able to solve problems in their farming with the farm. The farm solved the problems of the farm. So one of the main examples they had a slug infestation.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they didn't want to just kill the slugs. So they would gather the slugs and put them in a bucket, and then they would escape. That's not really going to be the long-term solution. So they're kind of like just looking at the different pieces of what they had, and they were like, well, we have this whole herd of ducks. Let's see if the ducks like the snails. And they sure did. You have these duck being fed with escargot, and you get rid of your snail issue.
Right.
So it's like that kind of
creating the balance. Yep.
Yes. The mindset and the diversity creates the health of the ecosystem, and you can solve the problems because it's diverse. And so with Heaven Permaculture, for me, because I'm an artist, I want to do this in culture, in the arts, in thought, in entertainment. Because for too long, the gatekeepers to the arts and entertainment have been, let's just say, they have wicked motivations.
Yeah.
And I believe that our society really is crying out for a reformation and more pure forms of expression. You can see that in the Me Too movement. So they're like, on one hand, they create this disgusting, immoral content, and then they wonder why there's immorality going on.
Right. Yeah.
Hello. So there's a cry for this more pure artistic expression. And so I want to create entertainment and culture and arts that are in line with Heaven's values. And I want to do it in a
more
diverse,
line with human nature as well. I always have noticed that with storytelling, whether it be film, TV, in any form, when it's, whether they intend it or not, when it's actually aligned with human nature, it resonates. And those tend to be more traditional conservative values, because they take human nature into consideration. I always say that that's kind of the one of the polar differences between the two sides of the spectrum is that, one side recognizes that humanity is inherently flawed, and they want to create a system that enhances the good in humanity so that we have a productive civilization of people working together. But that humanity is always going to be inherently flawed, and therefore, any society we create, any structure, government, so forth, so on, that we create is going to be inherently flawed, but we want to create the best one we possibly can. The other side, I think, thinks that humanity is inherently flawed, and we can fix it. Or that, I don't even know if they think it's inherently flawed. I think they think it's more of a top-down kind of a thing, where it's the circumstances have contaminated humanity. And so by changing, whether it be the government or the policies, that we can somehow fix humanity. And I think that's really kind of the polar difference. And I see that reflected in art, because, I think the art that we see typically coming from one side is very, it's very degrading and destructive. That was kind of the whole notion between the postmodern, the postmodernist movement. It's all very destructionist and deconstructionist. That there
Yeah,
was
it's
actually school of thought that was
nihilist.
deconstructionist, and the other side wants to create. So yeah.
I mean, I believe that it's very easy to know, is your soul being nourished by what you're seeing, by what you're hearing, or is it being wounded by what you're seeing and hearing?
Sure.
I've walked out of movies and I haven't watched anything in a long time, especially now that this whole thing is happening, because it's like, there are more important things to be doing.
Yeah.
And I'm an actress.
Yeah.
And I told my audience that I had a question on one of my lives. How do I get into acting?
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe you should be doing something else right now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do have hope for this nation, and I do have hope for the world. And there's going to be a vacuum that needs to be filled. And I want to be the one to fill it.
Awesome.
Because, I have so many ideas and scripts that are even finished, and musicals that are halfway done, and we need for the people who are walking in truth, who are walking in light, to be leaders in this area, because conservatives are not really known for their artistic production.
No, absolutely. And I think that's a huge lesson for conservatives. I think oftentimes when they do try, it's very pedantic and preachy, and that's not entertainment. Entertainment should be for the sake of entertainment. And, I believe that the way human beings learn, it's a priori storytelling. That's why we learn best through storytelling, because that is our a priori nature. Before we had the written word, before we had, the mediums to be able to write books and put on films and, tell stories in those kinds of mediums, we had storytelling, and that was how people learned. So I think it's what really resonates for people so deeply. And I think that's why it's so powerful and it's so important. But that's not, it has to have the entertainment value, and it has to have the fantasy element, and and by fantasy, I don't necessarily mean, that it has to be all magic and, pie in the sky, rainbows and unicorns and that kind of thing. I mean, it can be, but it has to have an element that isn't your life, your everyday life. It can be a slice of life, but it has to be something that people can capture their imagination.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a major need, and I'm calling on those with wealth in the conservative movement, those with wealth in the church, to say the other side has no problem pouring millions of dollars into their artists and into their propaganda.
Yep.
And we have to come back equally strong and even stronger, because we've been out of the game for that long. At least in a way that actually changes the hearts and minds of culture, and in a way that actually influences the youth. And it's like, we got to get on it. Big time.
I would agree.
People have let their kids be brainwashed because they get free babysitting at public school. So if you're you never get anything for free. You really don't.
Nope. And there's always a price.
Free babysitting. Yeah. Your kids might turn on you, and they have been.
They have.
So we have to say, like, what are the kinds of pieces of art that are going to actually, because I do believe that this art is meant to destroy our souls.
I would agree, actually. Yep. I absolutely agree. I think
so. It's like, how can we create something that actually nourishes the soul and does deprogramming? And says, like, how about a parents that are still together and they're happy?
Right. A novel concept.
Like Star Wars, their whole world is built on orphan heroes. every single one is an orphan. Do you have to be an orphan to be a hero? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I hope not.
You know, like, we got to look at these things and say, why?
There's a lot of anti-heroes also. That's a huge movement that we've seen, a trend in the past, I would say in the past few decades. And I think it's very destructive. You know, art should be aspirational, right? And that was what I was saying. Like, we don't want to, now we have this advent of all the reality television, the anti-hero. So it's people we can look down on. And, that's supposed to make people feel better about themselves, but that brings down culture. That's not elevating.
Totally. And especially with the ideologies being passed around to separate us based on how much melanin we have in this stuff that covers our bodies.
So evil.
People are done. People are done. At least the ones who know what's up.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
And
I think even people who don't necessarily know, because it doesn't resonate. That's not humanity, right? People don't want to be, divided, in a contrived manner. That's
And if you look at someone like Denzel Washington, and if you look at someone like whoever named the most recent very evil, superstar from I'll say the brown community, because my people say brown. It's so clear that they want to dehumanize. They want to turn people into animals. They want to turn people into objects of ridicule. And it's like, they wanted to do the same thing with Denzel. They wanted him to play roles where he would degrade himself, and he wouldn't do it.
He's awesome.
He wouldn't
love him.
do it.
Yep, he's awesome.
So there is no mystery as to people who hold themselves with respect and dignity, and those who don't. Whatever color this stuff is, we all know when someone has dignity and when someone doesn't. So let's look at when they're putting someone on a pedestal who's going to degrade themselves to such a degree, and say, maybe I should turn this off. Maybe I should boycott this company. Maybe I should do my own company so that I can have an alternative to this trash that they're constantly shoving down our eye holes. Destroy our morale, destroy our souls.
There's a term the Frankfurt School coined. It was called Affenhaben, and in German it literally means to negate culture, and that was their goal. It was to destroy the culture, and they were very effective. One of the mediums was through entertainment. Certainly we see it through education system, through the religious institutions, the destruction of the family, and the media, obviously. But the entertainment industry was a key component of that. And unfortunately, they've had a lot of success. And I think it is incumbent upon us, to anybody who has a desire to preserve the free will of humanity, to restore soul replenishing and soul nourishing entertainment.
So some of my favorite movies over the years that are so inspiring that I want to share,
please,
that is like in line with what kind of stuff I want to create. There's an amazing film called Babette's Feast, which is a foreign film. I think it's Flemish, so check out Babette's Feast. Another amazing film is The Inn of the Sixth Happiness, which is an Ingrid Bergman film, Inn of the Sixth Happiness.
Great.
It's about a missionary in Asia who leads like 100 orphans through a war zone, and none of them are lost. They all survive. We're talking babies across a war zone, bombs flying, and they all get to safety. It's based on a true story. And there's another amazing French movie called Ponette. About this little girl struggling with her mom's death, and she goes through all the religiosity, and she meets this little Jewish girl who teaches her the ways. And she said, you have to go through trials. And, you know, she made her walk the balance beam, and
wow,
it's so precious.
Wow.
Like, it's such a good movie. Ponette.
Ponette.
Wow. Ponette.
Okay.
It's just like, you know, movies that incorporate spirituality, movies that incorporate fantasy, as you say, are these fantastical, or you could say supernatural elements.
Yeah, totally.
And there's so many good movies, but compared to how many bad movies there are, it's like that's a tiny fraction.
I know.
Tiny fraction. Or like you know, even Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I loved Indiana Jones.
And
I wanted to be an archaeologist as a kid when I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, and my mom had to explain
Raiders
to me
of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Movie.
My mom's like, that's not really what archaeologists do. I was pretty I'm like, oh, okay.
But like, one of the most successful movies of all time.
Yep.
Very biblical.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
Fight the Nazis. Oh, another amazing movie, The Blues Brothers. I love The Blues Brothers.
Okay.
It's so good. You know, they're on a mission from God to fight the Nazis and save the orphans. Like, thumbs up.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
Well,
and
we need them now.
Some of the most amazing soul musicians in that movie too. You know, Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, all these guys.
Oh wow. How do I not know these? Yeah.
It's good. The Blues Brothers.
Blues Brothers.
So this is what Heaven Permaculture is, but it's also books.
Yeah.
It's also architecture. Like, if you haven't seen Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, this is architecture from out of this world. It is from pure creativity. And I don't know Gaudi. I don't know what his faith walk is, but according to the history, he wasn't really a devout man until he started building Sagrada Familia.
Interesting. Okay.
And through building this basilica, he became obsessively devout.
Wow.
Because he was getting downloads.
Right.
Like, his inspiration was coming so strong, and he became devout.
So interesting.
Like, how about building a building that can make you change your soul?
Yeah. Are you familiar with Roger Scruton?
No.
He's a philosopher. He wrote a lot about conservatism, but he was a very diverse, prolific writer, and he wrote also about wine, and he wrote about beauty and the philosophy of beauty. And it's he's brilliant and really fascinating. But a lot of what you're alluding to reminds me of the concepts he discusses, because I think a lot of what is lost in art is beauty. You know, when I was saying before about aspirational art, and part of, I think, what makes beauty is the aspirational component. You know, it is that thing to aspire to. You know, not necessarily, I think people might conflate that with emulate, which is what we have a lot in our culture. Like, this is the ideal of beauty, you know, that we're sold, and that's what you're supposed to emulate. That's not quite the same thing as aspirational, something that causes people to be inspired and to create. And
exactly. I'm super interested in that. I definitely want to look him up. But it's like, I think of the scripture, no one has ever been as rich as Solomon. They estimate that he was worth 2 trillion in today's money. So he was a trillionaire. And people just brought him money because he was so excellent, and his kingdom was so beautiful, and his temple was so beautiful, and his servants were so beautifully arrayed with how they were dressed and the way that their feasts were laid out. Sheba, the Queen of Sheba, came out and said, I heard rumors of your glory and your excellence, and you blew those rumors away.
Wow.
But it said, even Solomon in his splendor was not dressed as beautifully as a lily.
Lily.
Like a flower, like a lily flower.
Oh, wow. I thought that's what you meant at first. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like even a lily, a natural lily that grows and dies like this is more beautiful than Solomon and the riches of this world. So it's like, if we can recognize the amazing beauty that we have in what's real, what's been here for thousands of years that none of us invented, you know, like Bill Gates is creating meat from nowhere. Who knows what this meat is made of? And look at the packaging. There's
I would say he's
packaging.
destroying. I would say he's destroying actual meat, and he's using chemical hybrids to, you know, GMO products. That is a destruction of nature, and it destroys the ecosystem because we are meant to, you know, that's part of the animal chain, you know, the food chain. So yeah, I would actually say it's destruction, not creating, but yeah,
it's like we just need to take care of what we already have been given. And with the end goal of these people is mass murder, because they believe there should only be 500 million people on the planet. Look at the Georgia Guidestones. 500 million.
500 million. And that is what, so this next iteration with the climate crisis, you know, it comes out of the Club of Rome, wrote the book, the Limits of Growth. And I just think it is so incredibly, it's deception. They're masters of deception, because, you know, I know the powers that be know what they're doing, but they're promulgating this notion that carbon is evil. And anybody who took 5th grade science knows carbon is literally the life molecule. Like, you know, these scientists
carbon-based life forms.
Yes,
that's carbon-based.
So yeah, they want to eliminate carbon. So well, therefore, there go us.
Plastics are fine. You know, styrofoam is fine. All these things that poison people, no one talks about it.
No.
But you know, they say that they really care about the planet because of these things. They don't care. They don't care at all. So let's just call it what it is. It's a lie. And let's say, you know, y'all got to go to jail. You committed these crimes. You got to do the time.
Yeah, exactly. There should be, action should have consequences.
Yeah, it does for the people. It should for the people who are behind these organizations. They're people too. They don't get a pass because they have money. No. Right. But speaking of money, I did want to talk about money as well. Do we have time?
Do tell.
Okay, so I mean, it's a good transition because we're talking about Solomon. But I think that one of the best ways for people to prepare for whatever is happening and the turmoil that not only the elites are forcing on the planet, but also the turmoil of bringing the republic forth again, is
restoring America.
Restoring America is to change the money system, because this whole thing, it's about money. It's about banks. It's about, you know, passports. It's about social credit. All of these things that they want to implement before they're supposed to implement them before the time. They're trying to push their agenda. They are overplaying their hand.
They are.
Majorly. Because they see the prosperity. They see people are waking up. People are being healthy. People are living longer. And they're like, oh no, we need to kill them faster.
Right. Oh no, things are too good. Let's run.
Things are too good. Let's create a crisis, and then we'll be the ones to save them. Yeah, we've seen this happen before, guys. We're hip to your plans. All right.
Hegelian dialectic, crisis, reaction, solution.
So one of the ways that we can do that is the stuff.
I can't see the reflection. Is that gold? Gold.
Golds. And let me just say, gold is like, this is like Solomon's money. It's really reflective. You can kind of see it now. this is the money of kings. It's not really useful for very much, kind of like some kings. But my favorite is this. This is silver. And I have a silver bracelet with a little basket on it.
Nice.
I have a silver ring, because everything that's not silver or gold is credit.
Mm-hmm.
It's credit. And why silver and gold are such great items to be used, or, you know, resources to be used for money, is because there's inherent value and there's inherent labor involved in getting it.
Right.
So the labor is what backs up the value.
Yeah.
Not only that, but for silver, it's also quite useful in a lot of different technological applications.
Sure.
It's an amazing conductor of heat, and that makes it very good for so many different uses in technology, in medical, in communications, satellites, you know, so many things use silver. Oh, also protecting from electromagnetic frequencies, which is also a huge thing that they're zapping us all with these frequencies.
Yes.
And we don't know what it's doing to us.
No,
we don't know.
We really don't.
So I want to tell all the awake people, get some of this. Get some of this, because when the dollar crashes, silver goes vertical.
Right.
Silver is your insurance policy to what these bankers and what these corrupt people are doing. They've printed how many trillions in the last, you know, since January, and they want to print trillions more. You can't print money and not have consequences.
Yeah.
This is one of the main tenets of libertarian politics, free market economics. Is
some
that
schools of libertarianism, not all, but yeah.
So it's like, the only reason it has value, the only reason it's accepted as tender, is because of trust. And the trust in the dollar is going down, y'all, because of this false regime that's in power right now. And if I'm not mistaken, the one thing tying our dollar to any kind of value was the fact that it was tied to petroleum. It was tied to oil and gas. But let me tell you, the Saudis just made a new deal with Russia.
Yep, they did.
So what does that tell you about their trust in us right now under these jackals that are sitting in the White House? Not good.
No, not so good. No, not so good at all. Yeah.
So I don't care if you buy everything with cash and you think you're debt free and you have $100,000 in the bank. It's still debt, because our country is in debt and our currency is a debt note. It has no basis in real value.
Right. It's a
has no
currency.
Basis in labor. It has no basis in precious metals. It has nothing but trust.
There's nothing backing it up. There's no standard. Yeah.
So I believe that we all need to say, hey, we're going to use gold and silver. And even if these certain institutions don't recognize it, we can still use it. We can still trade with it. And so that's my other little tidbit for this session.
Where do you recommend people, do you have any suggestions on how people go about? Because you want to make sure that it's reliable, that it's valid, right?
So this gold that I have is it's a American Gold Eagle. It's the gold standard for this nation. And I get my stuff, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but oh, it's backwards. Is it backwards?
No, it's not backwards. It's just blurry.
Oh, it's not backwards?
No.
Okay, there's some glare.
Something Blanchard gold?
Blanchard.
Blanchard, okay.
It's because it's in a plastic thing.
Right. So it's
Here we go.
reflecting the light. Yeah.
BlanchardGold.com.
Awesome.
And the cool thing about Blanchard is they allow you to accumulate. So you can spend, sorry about that.
No, you're good.
You can spend $100 a month, $200 a month, $300 a month. And as soon as you get enough for a coin, they'll mail it to you.
Okay. Awesome.
So that's very handy.
Yeah.
For silver, you can just search on Yelp, just search silver coins, gold and silver buyer, gold and silver seller. There's usually a place in every metropolis where you can go. They're going to be very reliable. And I also, for online purchases, I use a company called AppMex, APMEX.
Okay.
AppMex. And they're cool because like when you go to a gold and silver shop, they're probably only going to have 1 or 2 or 3 different kinds of bullion at any one time, or any certain kind of coin at any one time. But AppMex has 100 different kinds of coins. And I really like some of the coins that I've got from them. Like I got, like a Noah's Ark coin. I got a Mandalorian coin. Oh, cool. Mandalorian is another cool show that actually has a lot of positive messages in it. And so it's like, I got one for the Mandalorian, and AppMex, APMEX. It stands for something Precious Metals Exchange. Okay. I think it's American Precious Metals Exchange. AppMex. And they also take credit cards, they take cash, they take crypto, PayPal. So they take a lot of different forms of payment. Okay. And I think it's really important for the awakened people to know what is really going on. And it's really about the banks. And it's, we need to take back our monetary system as well. We need to kick out these foreign powers that are controlling our currency. They have been for over 100 years. Yep. It's almost time for us to say
over 200 years. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely. Yeah. After the Federal Reserve, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a perfect time to do it. And also I really do believe Trump is coming back. So I bought a whole bunch of Trump coin, y'all. I don't care if it's a scam. I think it's going to be real. And it's part of my portfolio as well, because he's the real president. And it's a perfect way to separate those who had faith the whole time, even though the jackal was in the wrong seat. So I have a bunch of these too, these little cheesy little Trump coins. Yeah. There he is, baby. The real president. You heard it here right now. 2020, the real president, for better or worse. You know who it is. His name is Donald Trump.
The current installment was definitely an irrigation. That much I think most people can agree upon. So yeah.
So it's a really exciting time. It's time for us all to be Bonhoeffers and to say no to these Nazi people and to say enough. No, not on our watch.
Do not comply. Yep. So I'm curious what your thoughts are for artists who want to reclaim the culture. Ideally, my hope is that they do it in a way where they don't compromise, because I think that's been happening for way too long. And I think that we see that a lot, especially in that industry, where they're like, okay, well, we'll do this because we'll get this. And especially when you're dealing with the culture, that never really works out too well. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on what people can do and how we can?
It's so cool that you asked this question, because another part of the monetary downfall, you could say, of our greenbacks has been shown and manifesting in the crypto space. And I've actually I got an acting job years ago, like 4 years ago, talking about cryptocurrency and about blockchain technology and why it's so appealing is because of the transparency. you could say there's no hidden fees. There's no fine print. There's no this or that percentage APR that kicks in and you never knew. And it was this fine print. It's not, you don't have that in blockchain. It's transparent. So that's why people love it, because there's all these watchers watching the chains being built. Yeah. And it's like, you know, it's a lot better bet because it's by the people. The people are creating it, and it's not these ancient powers who have been manipulating countries for a long, long time. And so this is actually a really exciting time for artists, and you can see it happening with NFTs. And, you know, ESPN is selling clips of their famous athletes in the games for thousands of dollars. You have a clip of Jordan dunking and you just paid $200,000 for it. Wow. You know, like people are paying major bucks for clips of sporting events. Wow. They're paying major dollars for memes and for GIFs or GIFs or however you say it. I call it GIFs. To have the original file of that GIF. Like millions.
Crazy. I didn't know that. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. There's a major market for digital art. It's called digital art. So right now you have Spotify, who's making money hand over fist. Hand over fist. And the artists who have the top songs on Spotify make pennies on their songs. Yeah. Because they say, oh, well, it's about exposure. It's about getting your songs to fans. Sure. And they don't feel like they have to pay anything. Right. And YouTube used to be a lot better, but now they're just as bad. Yeah. And they're changing their payment structures and everything. So I think that the real way that we can free ourselves from these corrupt systems that we've been forced to go into if we want to make art at a high level, through the guilds and through the record labels and all of these things, we need to bypass these gatekeepers and start to make our own platforms, our own apps, our own NFTs, which stands for non-fungible tokens. And now, instead of getting paid pennies to have the #1 song on Spotify, which is getting millions of listens, how about you pay me a penny per listen? You know, and you can actually charge by the listen, and you can say this can be played 100 times on your app. And then, you know, you paid $1, you get 100 streams of this song. Right. You know, and you can actually start to say, we have more value than this. Music is not cheap to make. No. A movie is not cheap to make.
A movie is definitely not cheap to make.
No.
Yeah.
So we need to take advantage.
I know that industry well.
Yeah, and free ourselves of these gatekeepers who have been stealing from the artists for a long time. Yeah. And also the only ones that move up, the only ones that keep getting funded, that stay on their labels, are the ones who they can control.
Yep. The barrier entry. Yeah.
You know, like, you don't even want to fathom what these people are doing behind closed doors. Yeah. You don't even want to know, because it's that sick and twisted. Dark. Yeah. So we got to get rid of these gatekeepers. We got to just bypass them completely. And we also have to ask. That's something that I have been very hesitant in doing, is just asking. So
when you say ask, can you be a little bit more specific? Ask who? Ask what?
We need to ask people to help us create. We need to ask people to fund us. Yeah. And not just for this or that one project on Kickstarter. We need like legacy type money to build our own studios.
Right.
You know, in 25 years, I would want to be another Disney or something. I don't know how much work it's going to take to get there. I can have an idea of the money it would take to get there.
Right, right.
But these people aren't going anywhere unless there is a competition in the marketplace.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we have to come together, and we need to make our own networks and our own guilds.
Yeah.
Because the guilds obviously didn't protect you.
No.
They were forcing the test up your nose every day.
Yep.
And like, I don't even want to know what kind of damage they caused for all these artists. Oh, and did you notice the first to go, the first to be declared non-essential? Artists. So why are you a Democrat, artists? Why are you a Democrat? They don't need you. They don't appreciate you. You're the first to get kicked to the curb.
It's true.
So come to this side of the point. You know, but you know, the Republicans are no better. So we need to say, let's do something new.
Yeah, 100% of the Democrats are corrupt. About 50% of the Republicans are corrupt. So yeah, they're slightly better, but yeah. I really
think those Republicans are bought and paid for by China? They are.
I do believe that the Republicans, but from the inception of the Republic, not conservatives, not, true patriotic Americans who are trying to restore America and preserve the Constitution. But I do believe the Republicans were the controlled opposition for the Democratic Party. And that's why you always see, when they come into power, they just hold the line, so they never really push back. They never further, a true, American first agenda, because they're just holding the line so that the left can keep pulling us down further down the road.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we need to bypass. We need to organize. We need to have our own guilds. And
SAG is one of those, I'm a member of SAG, and it's actually, most unions actually help their members get work. That's the role of the union. SAG doesn't. If anything, SAG hinders you from getting work. It's this big catch-22 to get into SAG. I remember it was the biggest deal when I first got into SAG, because you can't work on a SAG project unless you're SAG. But you can't, be in SAG unless you work on a SAG project. It's like, okay, exactly. I'm just chasing my tail, like round and round. Here we go, and then I finally made it into SAG, and I was locked out of so much work because now they can't afford me. So they don't help you get work. They price you out of work. They don't protect you. They protect the elite, but there's that's 1% of SAG, less than 1%. Yes. It's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I worked in Europe, and all the work is non-union there, and it's a different kind of a system. Sure. But I made more in my first year acting as a professional than 90% of SAG actors.
Sure.
And I graduated from a top tier university in the arts.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because my auntie isn't the production manager, they don't give vouchers, right, to people. You could get into SAG being an extra, but you can't get into SAG having a real arts education. Yeah. It makes no sense. No. Like you said, it's a giant catch-22, and it's outdated.
Yeah.
And they have failed. They have failed their people.
Yeah, they failed their members for sure. Yeah. So now it's just a racketeering scheme.
So let's leave. Just leave.
Yeah.
Start a new guild. The Freedom Actors Guild of America.
I love it.
Who knows?
Maybe I'll start acting again if we can do that. I left the industry, but I love acting. I hated the industry. But I really did love the art. Yeah.
But even through this whole time, I'm so glad I switched to music during this pandemic thing, because I wouldn't have wanted to be those people having to
Right.
mask up all the time, get tested
Terrible.
incessantly. And then they were forcing them to get vaxxed.
Yeah.
And they're forcing them to put it on their resume, whether they were or not.
I know. Wait,
Excuse
is this
me?
part of my training? Is this part of my skill set? Why is this relevant? What happened to my medical history being private?
Yeah. And to anyone who went along with it, you might as well put a swastika on your resume.
Yep.
It's the same thing, y'all. Do you not see that? Come on.
Yeah. No, it is the same.
It's like, this is what they did when they did that.
Yep.
They had a pandemic. They had camps. They had quarantines.
Yep. Under the guise of that they were dirty and they were diseased and they needed to be cleansed. Yep.
Yeah. So all of the Jews in Hollywood, snap out of it.
Yeah. No, it is. And to see what's happening in Israel too is really, really hard to watch that.
No matter what your ethnicity, your tribe, your nation, your heritage, it's wake up time, y'all. It is wake up time.
Yeah. I agree. But the good news is people are waking up. And, that's why it is so important to me to have these conversations with people like you. And I do think that, the harder they push, the more egregious and absurd, the clown world events become. I think the more people, do start to see, hey, this doesn't really make sense. What's going on here? And that's the hope. And, that's for me, that's my biggest hope, is just that nobody has to agree with me. Nobody has to, like what I say, or even like me. I prefer you did, but you don't have to. But I do want them to ask questions, start, thinking and connecting dots and seeing what's going on, and ask themselves if this really makes sense, because a lot of this really doesn't make sense.
No. And it's like, I don't want to have to say these things. Yeah. I don't want to have to, argue. Yeah. I really don't. I don't like it. Yeah, but
not fun.
It's, I want to make a nation safe for my future children and my future grandchildren. And these are the times that we have to, I'm an adult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My parents aren't going to do it.
Yeah.
I have to.
Yeah,
you have
absolutely.
to. And we're the adults, y'all. We are the ones who are the adults. It
is up to us.
This thing is psychological. It's psychological and physical with all the,
The psychological warfare component is very, very strong. And I would actually argue in some ways that we wouldn't have the physiological without the psychological. So the psychological warfare is definitely the first line of offense, and it needs to be I think the spiritual component needs to be the strong line of defense in a lot of ways. And I think psychology is fascinating. I studied a lot of it, but I do think that in a lot of ways, some of the intention was to avert, the problems of the soul, the problems of spirituality, and to mask it with a psych problem that can be fixed with a pharmaceutical, or with a dependency on a person that you foster this relationship and codependency. And that's not, in many times, that's not to say that, psychology has never helped, or, that there's non-benefits, but I think that that's where we're at. We're seeing the school of psychology being weaponized against the people. And I think the defense against that, the way to mitigate that, is for people to, tune into their intuition, to strengthen their spirituality, and to strengthen their critical thinking skills, their skills of discernment. Right. I think that is the defense to the psychological warfare. So.
Yeah, for sure. And in that same vein, it's like, so me as a woman of faith and as an artist, there is a temptation to say, oh, well, I'm just going to sing in church, or I'm going to do these things. And it all happens in secret, whether good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you do in secret is what you're going to be rewarded or punished for. So when I'm giving money,
Mm-hmm.
I don't tell anyone.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm worshiping or doing prophetic things or making certain declarations or prayers or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
I don't tell anyone
Mm-hmm.
because I know who sees me.
Right.
I know who sees me. So my power and my authority comes from what I do in secret. Because I'm not doing it for anyone but one.
Right.
An audience of one, or an audience of the Trinity, you might say. So on the spectrum of morality, you have people who do good things at their own expense,
Mm-hmm.
at their own sacrifice for the benefit of others in secret.
Mm-hmm.
And at the other end, you have people who pretend to be righteous, pretend to be good, but they actually do things to harm other people for their own benefit in secret. So this is the extreme, and you have to look at your leader and you have to say, which type of person is this probably?
Right.
On which end of this spectrum is this person? And when you find someone who you believe is doing good things in secret that no one knows about, you need to get behind that person. You need to put your money to that person's business or ministry or art or anything. And you need to say, you need to sow into that leadership.
Right.
And so I want to encourage people to say, artists, for example, to say, we need leadership in the arts.
Mm-hmm.
We need good, true leadership. And we need to give our talent, our time, and our resources to the leaders of the new Renaissance. Mm-hmm. Or, in my case, Heaven Permaculture, because
mm-hmm.
that's my piece of the Renaissance.
Right.
And that is how we're going to be able to nourish our children's souls, because our children are getting it from very toxic sources in general.
Right.
And we need a healthy alternative, just like we put our money towards organics and the organic sector grew.
Yeah.
We need to put our money towards positive leaders in the arts, and we will see it grow. And we have to refuse to give our money to the toxic offerings in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And that's how we're going to see true change in the arts in this nation and in the world.
I love it. It's so beautiful. I'm curious, you're talking about this, you're familiar with the Astroworld and the Travis Scott concert. Are you familiar with? Yeah.
I can't even, and finally, Gen Z is calling this what it is, demonic.
Yeah. Well, Gen Z is, they do say the pendulum tends to swing, and we definitely see that with Gen Z. Gen Z is definitely swinging to the right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy, and I'm so glad. And, I confess, I stayed quiet for too long. Mm-hmm. I stayed out of the game for too long. Yeah. And I thought I could do it in the private sector. I thought I could do it gracefully and just infiltrate the pyramids. Yeah. And I don't want to infiltrate the pyramid anymore. I want to build a basilica. Right. I don't want to infiltrate these gatekeepers. Mm-hmm. They don't have anything for me. They don't have anything for me at the top. Right. Except something I don't want.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. So I had asked you before, but I would like to hone in on this, because I think it is something that a lot of artists really struggle with. It's just that they feel that they do have to compromise. And I want to be more specific on the values in art, because, arts, you look at children's fables, like that is how values are imparted. It is through art, through storytelling. And that's why it has such a profound impact on the culture. And I think that a lot of, conservatives have compromised their values because they feel that they either will be completely canceled in the industry, or they feel that they have to, compromise a little bit to, they don't want to take a hard stance. Because then, they want to get, like, they can put a little bit in, but they're going to give up somewhere. And yep. I have a real challenge with that. It really bothers me, because I think that, especially when it comes to, but it's true for all people, but I think especially when you're dealing with children know, they can feel it. And the art has such a profound impact on them. Yeah. That's how they learn about the world, is through, the fairy tales they watch, the action movies they watch, yep. The comics they read. And if the values are being compromised there, then what message does that teach them, when they're in their formative years and learning and shaping their code of ethics and their, views on morality? So what are your thoughts on that? What's your advice for artists?
Well, this is such a rich question. It's an awesome question. There's so much that we think is completely normal, that we think is just a given mm-hmm. in culture and society in the world. Right. It's something that we've all inherited over the years. Yeah. And it has nothing to do with the truth. It has nothing to do with being free. It has nothing to do with beauty. And it's like the best intentions of our ancestors really aren't serving us anymore in a lot of these ways. Mm-hmm. One thing this is just like ringing in my head, I have to bring it to the forefront, is like Santa Claus. Mm-hmm. If you tell your children that Santa Claus is real and that he's coming down the chimney mm-hmm. and that he has these elves and that he has a sleigh and it has something to do with Jesus's birth, and there's Jesus and there's Santa Claus, and then at a certain point you say, oh wait, no, actually Santa's not real, but Jesus is real. That causes cognitive dissonance mm-hmm. in your children, because they can't really trust you to tell okay. them the truth at that point. For example, and what this has to do with is the Nephilim Spirit. Mm-hmm. Nephilim were created when fallen angels mated with women, human women. And I believe that they created the gods of mythology that we're all taught is fantasy. Mm-hmm. It's a fairy tale. Mm-hmm. Mythology is a fairy tale. Mm-hmm. But when I was studying mythology, I was fascinated with mythology, and I was really into it. At a mm-hmm. Christian school, I was learning about it. Okay. And now I really believe those gods and goddesses were Nephilim. And they had real powers, and they really walked the earth, and they were real. They were real. They're not a fake fantasy. They're real beings walking the earth with powers. And call me crazy, but this is what I have come to believe recently, mm-hmm. actually. So you get a Nephilim spirit or a Nephilim society when you mix the holy with the unholy. You cannot mix the holy with the unholy. Then it all becomes unholy. You can't make the unholy holy by mixing it mm-hmm. together like that. You have to have something completely new. Mm-hmm. That's why when, if you're in the Christian tradition, you get baptized so mm-hmm. that you die and you raise back again, and now you're a new creation, or even some people say a new species.
Oh, wow.
So if you want to talk about racism really doesn't exist because it's all one race, the human race.
Yeah, exactly.
It's ethnicity and it's color wars. It's color wars. And so we're one human race. But then when you die and get born again and you raise up from baptism, you're a new species. You're a new creation. There's the old is dead, the new is here. So we have these things in society that we all just accept. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the history of Christmas, you'll see that it was actually a very paganistic, evil season of the year, and people would go nuts in, demonic rituals and human sacrifice, and they're doing all these things, which they still do, by the way. But the powers that be in the government said, there's too many crazy pagan things going on. Let's Christianize this pagan time of year, and hopefully there'll be a lot less crazy pagan crap going on, basically. So they infused it with Jesus and they Christianized it. But then it introduces these lies into society. And when people really think that Jesus was born? 9/11.
What?
That he was actually born in September.
Really?
Because of the Hebrew calendar and the Gregorian calendar. And so these sick, twisted people want to make 9/11 a day of mourning. So they create this issue. And now people are mourning on Jesus's birthday instead of celebrating it. And people are celebrating paganism.
Where does this idea that it was 9/11, where does that come from? I've never heard that.
Well, look into it. I don't know.
Yeah, no.
I wasn't there.
Okay,
but
yeah.
You could say.
I didn't think you were there. I'm just asking where if you know where to look to see where that notion originates.
Yeah, look in the Gospels. Look in the Gospels. It says certain months this was happening, but it's the Hebrew calendar. Mm-hmm. But you can also say this was while shepherds were watching their flocks by night, which wouldn't have happened in the wintertime.
Right. No, that wouldn't.
They wouldn't have been in a grazing season. They would have been in a barn season, and they would have been indoors if it were actually during winter. Right. So that's one thing. And there's a few other things, but that's the one thing I'll say. The shepherds grazing was the reason why it couldn't have been in wintertime.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So when you mix the holy with the unholy, you got problems in your society. It's just another way that they demoralize humanity by filling them with lies. And I'm sure you've heard that quote by someone who used to be the head of the CIA or whatever. If we can make every American that what they believe is a lie, then we've done our jobs.
Yeah, I forgot who said that. Oh, I was just listening to that the other day too. Yeah.
Yes. So it's like, you got to look into these things that people just take for granted as truth. And it's part of the culture and it always will be. No,
right.
No, it doesn't have to be.
Right.
We can say no.
So then to get back to the question, let's say it's which most of the traditional Hollywood industry doesn't want to make a Christmas movie anyway, but let's say they were going to, make it with a lot of these, more commercialized messages. What would, how does someone who has a more traditional view, what do they do? Because they still want to work and they still, the argument that I hear from a lot of conservatives, and it's not just in, Hollywood, but in general, we're hearing in the media, in general, people are saying that they have to kind of pick their battles because, being canceled completely isn't productive either, right? If you have no platform at all, then how are you to make a dent and how are you to have any impact? So I love what you were saying about creating the alternate, the alternate guilds and creating our own material and all that. But a lot of that requires resources, networks, money. It's not easy, and it's not going to happen overnight. So I absolutely applaud that mission. And I think that we should absolutely go forth. And there are a lot of people who are doing that. And I, support them and commend them in whatever way we can support them. We should. But I think there's a lot of, there's so much talent, and there are a lot of people who really do want to be involved and that, contribute their talent. But they don't know how to walk this line. And it's tough. I mean, I know for me personally, it's one of the reasons I did leave, the entertainment industry. It was just, the roles that were being offered, it was, that wasn't what I got into it to do. Not to say that I have to have my dream role every time, and it didn't have to be big roles either, but I didn't like the direction it was going, and I didn't want to serve that. If I were to really look back, so much of it, and that's when I got into producing, and I was trying to make films that I was really passionate about, and that, that a message I could get behind. And that's so hard. It's so hard. I, really came across, I learned a lot, and it was quite a journey. It was really difficult. And I was taken for a ride, and, went to the school of hard knocks, we can say, so I know that, and the one of the ones that was really a passion project, a baby of mine, it never got made after years and a lot of hardship and being swindled. And that's definitely a story for another day. But, so I know it's not that easy. We can't just go off and be like, I'm going to make 10 movies are not cheap, right? Music's not cheap. To make a series, not cheap. So even if we were to say, like, I'm going to make the cheapest thing, that how do we get the distribution? How do we get the visibility? So sorry, this is very long-winded, but that's I know it's a question that a lot of artists have, and that a lot of, I think a lot of even the audience has. How do we navigate this?
Yes. Well, it is really important what we do or do not support with our money and with our attention. Like our attention is monetized now.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
The amount of time our eyeballs spend looking at something is monetized.
Yeah, it's true.
So at a time like now, when it's so clear, and history will prove that this was a major lie, and it was a majorly evil campaign, and a lot of people were involved in perpetrating it. And I wish that there was a better illustration besides Nazi Germany, but there's just not.
Well, and it's a good one because it's a recent one. It's a fairly recent
one.
Yeah. So a lot of people know that we're familiar. This isn't, something we can say people don't have knowledge of.
Yeah. So I had an idea to do dance protests.
Oh, I think you were telling me about this. It's awesome. Yeah.
There is a precedent for this, and you can find it in the movie Swing Kids, because this was a true story. The Nazis wanted to shut down swing dancing,
right? Because
a lot of the jazz musicians were Jewish and were Black.
Yep.
So they said, this is evil music. This is heathen music. Mongrel music, and why not just dance to good German music? And they were shutting these dance clubs down,
right?
And now we see places of entertainment, papers please.
Yeah,
I even saw it in Nashville. I never thought I would ever experience that in my lifetime, and I did.
Yeah.
By a dance party that I would say, for me, heralded like the end of COVID, because it was mixed. Nobody was wearing masks. It was amazing classic music.
Wow.
And it was like everyone was together. They were talking to each other. They were smiling at each other.
Wow.
And 2 weeks later, the party was dead. papers, please.
Wow.
And so my response was, let's go dance outside of this place.
Yeah.
And show people what you're doing is wrong. We're going to protest it peacefully.
Yeah.
We're going to protest it in a form fitting to the crime.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what artists should be doing now.
I love that.
The compromise is not going to change anything. And it's going to make you feel like a piece of crap.
Yeah.
While you're compromising.
Yep, of course.
But at the same time, there are precedents in scripture. And you have to be in touch with your spirit to know whether you should do something or not.
Mm-hmm.
There's no black and white answer.
Of course. Yeah.
And an amazing example of this is Daniel.
Okay.
He was serving Babylonian kings as a magician.
Mm-hmm.
He was serving among the magicians.
Right.
Which you could say there's a lot of that going on in the entertainment industry. There's a lot of occult practices going on. And he was able to serve in an evil regime among evil people who were practicing the occult. And he was able to show his excellence in that field while maintaining his holiness. He said, I'm not going to eat what you're going to eat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do what you're going to do. When they said bow to the golden idol, a lot of award shows going on, lots of golden idols being passed around. They said, we're not going to bow. And because they said, we're not going to bow, they got the death penalty. That's a pretty big penalty.
Yeah, I would think.
But they didn't die because they had supernatural provision, and they were operating in their full power as people of the highest integrity. So, when this whole thing crumbles, and it will, the people who maintained their integrity and said no, they're going to be the new leaders, because they suffered while everyone was getting a pass to just say, yes, 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 test me, so I can get a paycheck.
Right.
Who's going to have respect for those artists? I don't. I can have compassion for them, but I don't have respect.
Right.
I'm certainly not going to follow their lead ever again.
Yeah.
So during these times, your integrity is way more important than your desire to be on screen.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be.
It should.
But, people got to feed their families, but there's always a way. There's always a way to escape. There's always a way. You just have to be a creative thinker, and you have to pray. You have to say, what do I do here? Because I don't have the answer of what you should and shouldn't do. But this whole thing doesn't pass the sniff test. And, if they're saying do this or else, that's a bad person. It's a bad person. You shouldn't listen to someone who says do this or else.
Right. Because people have free will. They make their own choices. And hopefully it's in line. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I don't listen to leaders who threaten me. That's not a loving leader. I don't follow that kind of leader.
Well, it's not a loving lead. Yeah, it's not a loving leader, and it's not empowering. Somebody who's empowering gives you, lets you take ownership of your choices. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there is an aspect to infiltration. Mm-hmm. And if you have been infiltrating, but really what it's been is cowardice.
Right.
It hasn't really been infiltration, has it? It's been cowardice. Or it's been ignorance.
We have a pandemic of cowardice for sure.
Yeah. Yes. So it's like, I almost feel like I feel so emotional. It's like, I want to cry for these people.
And I do want to add something about the ignorance. I think that ignorance is really about cowardice. I think that because people think ignorance is bliss. And I always say ignorance is bliss until reality smacks you in the face. You can't really avoid reality, right? So you can only avoid it for so long. But I do think that's where the ignorance stems from. I think a lot of people want to absolve themselves of responsibility under the guise that they didn't know.
Exactly.
So sorry, but yeah.
Exactly. So everyone, no matter if they believe in God or not, they always reap what they sow.
Sure.
Unless you're operating in grace.
Yeah.
And you can operate in grace by confessing, saying, I was wrong. I was blind. Yeah. I was afraid.
Right.
And then you say, I need your grace.
Yeah. And
also another way to operate in grace is worship and doing good things in secret. So the antidote for all of this stuff is grace, because we can't dig ourselves out of the mess that we're in. Right. We need grace. And we need to say we were wrong here, here, and here. And we confess that we were wrong. And we confess that we were lazy and we were afraid and we were ignorant. And then we can operate in grace again, which is what we really need to get ourselves out of this crazy time that we're in and this pit of despair, honestly.
Yeah.
And all the people who have been affected by this, and y'all, if you think this virus was bad, you don't even know what kind of stuff they have in those labs. You don't even know, y'all. So if you were this afraid of this little thing, what's going to happen when something 50 times more dangerous comes by? What are you going to give up your freedoms then? Oh yeah, you would. If you gave them up with this, you would give them up like this. Yeah. With something actually dangerous. So y'all, we're spirits. We're spirits. Our spirit's eternal. It's going to live somewhere or another place. So it's like we have such an ability to change the world, to plant and to heal. Yeah. And no one can heal on your behalf. You have to take responsibility for your own healing. And we as a nation, we're going to be judged collectively. And we can also, like, you know, how is that judgment going to go? We all decide. So yeah, we have an amazing opportunity. And you know how they say build back better? Well, it's not going to be better, y'all. It's going to be worse.
Well, they got to tear it down before you can build it, right?
So, yeah, so we need to
the part they don't say.
Yeah, we do need to stop these systems of injustice, and we need to say we're hip to what you've done. We're not going to take it anymore. Yeah,
for sure. Well, this was awesome. Do you have anything else you want to leave us with? And definitely tell everybody where they can find you.
Okay, cool. Well, I would love to connect with you guys. I'm so honored to be, you know, featured on your podcast. So thank you for having me, my darling.
This is awesome.
And I want to tell people we are in this together. And they want to separate us. They want to isolate us. So we have to come together, and we have to come together in person. Mm-hmm. You know, virtual togetherness is not the same.
No.
So have, you know, host a party. I wanted to have a new political party that says the Purple Party.
My favorite color.
The Royal Party.
So why purple?
Yeah, because purple is the color of royalty.
Ah, yes, it's true. It is.
And that's another element of heaven, is the kingdom aspect. Mm-hmm. So no power on this earth can take your freedom if you are royalty in the spiritual realms. Mm-hmm. They can kill you, but they cannot take your freedom, just like Braveheart.
Right. Yeah.
So, and just like Bob Marley said, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. And so these people are prophets. These people are prophets, and they're speaking the truth because it's happened so many times through history. Right. So I'm a futurist. I believe we do have a really bright future ahead. We've been through so much together, y'all, over the past, throughout my whole lifetime. I've been a slave in some way or another. This whole nation has been enslaved. So let's think about what it'll look like when we're actually free again. So start to dream and start to have visions, even if they don't come to pass for 10 years, 20 years, write them down. Write down your visions, because sometime, if you operate in grace, you will have the opportunity to bring your vision to reality. So that's the way to survive, is keep your vision strong and let your dreams create your future, because we have creative power with our thoughts that start here and then it becomes tangible.
Right.
So let's start casting those visions for our future and the different new systems that we're going to need in order to be a free society again and a free nation.
Awesome. And where can they find you?
You can find me. The best place is my website, which is www.erinjoharris.com, or on Instagram at Erin Jo Harris, ErinJoHarris.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.